Asbestos. It is known by many names: white gold, magic mineral, and in recent times, evil dust. Whatever you may call it, much care needs to be taken when removing, handling, and disposing of this hazardous material. Asbestos can be found in many products, including roof sheeting, vehicle brakes, clutch linings, ceiling, and ceramic tiles. The health hazards associated with asbestos exposure are well documented.
There are four major health effects of exposure to asbestos in an occupational setting. The first one is pleurisy. Pleurisy is the inflammation of the lining of the lungs. And what that does is it causes the lungs actually filled with fluid. The second is asbestosis. Asbestosis is caused when a person is exposed to large amounts of fibers. The fibers actually cause scarring of the lungs and you get fibrosis of the lungs. The third is mesothelioma. Mesothelioma is a lung cancer, a type of lung cancer. And the fourth is that asbestos, if you're exposed to it, it actually increases your risk of getting other types of lung disease.
The major way in which you become exposed to asbestos is through inhalation.
The symptoms will actually concentrate in your respiratory area. So you have things like coughing, for example, but that's if you, in the early stages of asbestosis, you get a lot of coughing. And then you have things like difficulty breathing because the lungs are affected. And the majority of the time, the lungs have difficulties actually expanding. You get pain when you try to breathe, and you get pain in the chest and stuff like that.
It's important to remove asbestos by following proper procedures and guidelines as set out by the Environmental Protection Department of the Ministry of the Environment.
The role of the EPD is to ensure that there's public health and safety, especially during the removal of asbestos material. And secondly, is to ensure that the policies and guidelines are adhered to at all times by the contractors. The pre-removal inspection requirements set out by the Environmental Protection Department is first, a request has to be made to the Director of the Environmental Protection Department in writing, and that request should state the date, the proposed removal date, as well as the location from which the removal is supposed to take place. That date should be sent at least 2 weeks prior to the removal of the asbestos. When the department received that request, we would then do a pre-inspection of the area so that we determine what would be the best suitable time. Because if the removal is being done where there are different type of business activity, for example, school or a highly populated business environment, then the department will determine what is the most suitable time for the removal to take place. That is one of the reasons for the pre-inspection.
The Environmental Protection Department, or EPD, has certified contractors who have been trained in the removal, handling, and disposal of asbestos material. However, the department is seeing a troubling trend where some members of the public try to remove asbestos by themselves.
The practice of removing asbestos by untrained persons can create problems to the environment in which they are operating within, because then they are exposing not only the person that is doing the removal, but also the environment that is surrounding the area. Now, that situation is covered by the health services nuisance regulations, where that will now come into play, because we will always try to insist upon persons to follow the necessary guidelines, procedures If they are not aware, they can contact the Environmental Protection Department, and we would guide them as to the correct procedure for the removal and disposal of asbestos.
There are two types of asbestos, bonded and friable. The friable type refers to asbestos that can be easily reduced to dust by applying pressure with one's hands. The bonded type, however, only becomes airborne if the material is damaged in some way.
Asbestos is only dangerous when it's disturbed. You can live with under an asbestos roof all your life as long as it's in good condition and it has not been disturbed. And in disturbing, we're talking about removal. If you're grinding or if you're sanding, some form, any tampering with asbestos is when it becomes dangerous.
It is important that anyone handling asbestos or any hazardous material wear the correct personal protective equipment, also referred to as PPE.
So we need to have a structured approach to selecting personal protective equipment. That comes as a result of assessment of the risks and making sure that you have an inventory of all the hazards to which the worker is exposed to. Because they may not only be exposed to asbestos, they may be working on roofs, they may be working at heights, they may be working in confined spaces which have oxygen deficient atmospheres. So there is where it's critical that the person who, or the contractor who is involved in the asbestos removal contact Environmental Protective Department, make sure that they have the correct respirators. They may need air supply respirators depending on the nature of the asbestos that they're removing, and they may need other type of personal protective equipment. They will obviously need to have their overalls, boots, gloves, and goggles, etc.
Mr. Kamihi is putting on the Tyvek overall, and it should be an overall that is impoverished. That is, it should not be a cloth overall. It should be one that is disposable, and this is the one type that is being used. And after putting on the overall, he's putting on his safety boots. It's important to have his safety boots because you're dealing with materials on a construction site or so, and you never know what type of safety hazards that you might be encountering. All right, this suit should be properly secured before you do anything else. That is what he is doing now, securing his, making sure that the suit is properly, he's probably attired in the suit. After securing the suit, then he has now to be put on the respirator. And this is important because you should not start any asbestos removal without having on your respirator because you're dealing with a hazardous material and you should be protected at all times. That's why it's important to have the personal protective equipment on before you start to do any removal. Now he's now putting on the gloves because you know you're handling the asbestos and sometimes you might have sharp edges. So it's best to have, you know, gloves to help protect your hands from any of the sharp edges where you can be easily injured. So that's basically, this is how one should be attired prior to and during the removal of the asbestos.
According to Mr. Goodrich, employees can refuse to work if they don't have the proper equipment.
Under the Safety and Health at Work Act, it gives the worker the right, if he feels that he's being put into a situation which can cause him serious safety and health issues later on. And asbestos, exposure to asbestos, it has been shown that if you are exposed to asbestos, you can suffer from serious health issues. then he has the right to say, well, hold on a minute. I don't feel safe doing this job. I'm going to refuse to do this dangerous job. I am going to consult with my Joint Health and Safety Committee if there is one. And as a last resort, he can also ask to consult with the Safety and Health Department of the Labor Department, whereby the work will be assessed, the type of PPE that he has been given will be assessed, and a determination will be made as to whether or not it's adequate or not. The provisions under Section 104 of the Safety and Health at Work Act. Under the Act, a worker cannot be penalized because he is invoking his right. Remember, he's not withholding his labor. He's basically saying that I believe that I'm being exposed to a dangerous situation that can affect my health. And he's saying, I would like to consult with my Joint Safety and Health Committee. I would like to consult with my safety representative and have this thing analyzed and looked in further so that I can ensure that I am provided with the safety and health conditions, the personal protective equipment that I need in order to do the job in a safe manner. So the Act gives the worker that protection.
Barbados has an asbestos disposal site located at Rockhall, St. Philip. Here, the hazardous material is safely buried. The site operates Monday to Friday from 7 a.m. until 3:30 p.m. It is to be noted that all persons taking asbestos there must have an approval letter from the EPD. Remember, asbestos should only be removed by contractors who have been certified by the Environmental Protection Department. If you need to have any asbestos material removed from your property, send a request in writing to the Director of the Environmental Protection Department, LV Harcourt Lewis Building, Dalkeith, St. Michael. Notice, including the date and location of demolition, must be given at least 14 days before the operations commence. An inspection will be carried out by officers of the EPD prior to the removal.
We welcome your feedback on our programs. You may email your comments to bgisfeedback@barbados.gov.bb. You may also view our website at www.gisbarbados.gov.bb or subscribe to our YouTube channel, the BGIS.